video. This is the vegan anarchist. In this video, it's a debate between Ancom. Well, in this corner you have anarchist. In this video, it's a. In this corner we have. Well, in this corner you have.
Sorry.
In this video we have. Just stop Ancom. Okay. In this video we have. In this video we have.
You should do the introduction like, you know, they introduce boxers. In the red corner, weighing far too much, I'm a complete fat fuck, is Anarcho-Communist. Something like that.
Okay, stop. Who's responsible for this?
What?
Why do I hear an echo?
Maybe it's the fun.
Does
that help?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that helps. Anyways. Having trouble. Sorry, people. What's going on?
Vegan.
Okay,
just start.
It's really hard when there's echo.
Where's the echo coming from?
Okay, I'll turn off my fucking fan too.
Anyways, so Mutualist, freedom fighter, this yellow guy. He's not Carson-like Mutualist. He's more of a market Mutualist. Okay, this echo's distracting. Somebody cut it out. Is it coming from me? Let me see.
Not coming from me. I'm not hearing any echo.
Oh, okay, good.
Me neither.
Must be using.
Oh, I think I know what's going on. Hold on. Oh, I see. I found the problem. Okay, good. Anyways, please introduce yourselves. Yes, because I have this one and another link of it live.
Yeah, I had that as well. I've stopped it, so.
Anyways, introduce yourselves.
Hi, hi, I'm Bobby, aka Mutualist Freedom Fighter 3. You may have seen me post sometimes. I am a mutualist anarchist, anarcho-feminist, green anarchist with some slight egoistic tendencies.
Anything else? Should I just stop?
And I guess it's Ancoms.
Okay. Well, I've had this channel since February 2016, but I've been an anarchist for over a year now. I became an anarchist 2015 August. My favorite anarchist thinker of all time is Emmett Goldman, and I'm very much the epitome of an anarcho-communist. That's my philosophy. That's the one I follow. I've looked into other schools, but they don't really fit for me. I mean, there are schools like anarcho-feminism, but that's not exactly a school of anarchism. That is actually just an anarchist critique of feminism. But anyway, shall we get this started?
Yes, we should. All right, Ancom, state your position and what your tendency within anarchism is about.
Okay. Well, my position in anarchism, as we've already pointed out, is anarcho-communism. By anarcho-communism, I mean basically what the end goal of communism is. The end goal of communism being the absence of a class structure, the absence of a state, the absence of money. You get the whole 9 yards there. So it's going to be about how to achieve such a position, isn't it? And my way of getting to it is using mass syndicalist movements like, you know, workers' uprisings, strikes, especially wildcat strikes. They're my favorite. So the reason I want to do this is because of how humans interact with one another. If you left humans to their own devices, they would act in anarchistic ways. By this I mean, have you ever been in a small group of people? In a small group of people, you often collectively decide upon, and everyone has to agree on what they're going to do. For example, if you're in a small group of people and people have a vote on what they want to do, let's say some people want to go to the cinema and others want to go to a party or something, and people will put their opinions forth on this, and some will say, yeah, I don't mind which one I go to, so I'll go along with the flow either way. That's basically consensus decision making standing aside. That's basically what that is. So if you look at this, it's basically applying this philosophy on a larger scale with decisions which affect the society you live in. For example, people will collectively agree on laws, collectively agree on the sanctions for breaking said laws. A lot of people think anarchism is just people running around doing whatever the hell they want, which it isn't. I'm just going to get that one straight. If any uneducated people are watching this debate somehow, even though this is about facets of anarchism, not if anarchism is successful or whatever. So that is my basic philosophy of it. It's the idea of applying small decision-making processes which we engage in every day and applying it to a larger society. Okay? I think I'm finished here. Bobby, take it away.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Bobby, aka Mutualist Freedom Fighter 3. When I first got into politics, I was very much your standard American progressive. Then for a while, I was a classical liberal in the American sense. Then I was something of a paleo-conservative conspiracy buff. I became an anarchist around 2012, and I became a proper anarchist around 2 years later. Some of my favorite anarchist thinkers include Kevin A. Carson, Benjamin R. Tucker, Sean Wilbur, even though I think a lot of these individuals have vulgar libertarian tendencies, but nonetheless, they helped get me into mutualism. And my understanding of mutualism is actually a combination of various different schools of mutualism. You see, mutualism is not quite individualist, nor is it exactly collectivist. Rather, it synthesizes the two into a rational synthesis, which is based around reciprocity, mutual aid, and free free confederal action, free confederations of workers. And mutualism opposes rent, usury, excessive taxation upon the working class, because mutualism views these things as forms of economic exploitation, which are not natural results of market action, but rather they are distortions of truly free market activity by the ruling elite.
And I guess you two have stated your position. Now it's time for your rebuttals. Try to be more conversational, but try not to interrupt.
Okay.
Round two.
Okay, I'm going to state, you might not believe in this aspect of mutualism, but I'm going to state my generic problems with the mutualist position. Now, the first one is with a market economy. I might be wrong about your facet of mutualism, but in a market economy, there's often a problem with power eventually being, brought up collecting. It collects in small areas and eventually leads to a hierarchy developing. But I'm going to assume, I don't think you do, I don't think you believe in a monetary system. So I think you believe in labor vouchers, right? So
correct.
Okay. Right, so if you believe in labor vouchers, then this is a whole new question. Labor vouchers are a system which cannot be traded for. So, for example, if I have 5 labor vouchers, this is more of an anarcho-collectivist and mutualist ideology than anarcho-communist, which I advocate for. Sorry, which I advocate for free access of resources, except in times of scarcity where labor vouchers can be used. But the thing about labor vouchers is it's still somewhat a limit on how much someone can take. And I don't believe people take more than they need to. I don't think they do. If you've ever been to a buffet restaurant, for example, and people only take what they need to, even though some people may try to pile up their plates with food, that tends to be a very small minority. Most people just take what they think they can eat. So that's just an example, and I'm, again, applying this to a larger society. So I'm applying how humans interact on small scales, applying this to a larger society, and that's my justification for anarcho-communism over mutualism with your labor voucher system. The problem with, I see markets, even if money isn't a thing, I still see the problem with markets with their dysfunctional nature, and markets often foster competition over cooperation. But then again, there are aspects of what I understand in mutualism is cooperatives in a market economy often competing with one another, which is kind of awkward in a way. I might be mistaken about that, but is that how it works? Just wondered there.
Well, the thing about
sorry for interrupting, but I'm just wondering what's the difference between Bobby's position and the anarcho-collectivist position?
Oh, okay. The difference between my position and the anarcho-collectivist position is anarcho-collectivists essentially believe in a temporary labor voucher system before ultimately kind of moving on to a more like purely anarcho-communist stage, transitioning, like basically anarcho-collectivism is kind of a way to peacefully transition from a more collectivistic / mutualistic type society to an anarcho-communist society without a violent revolution being necessary. That's the kind of the goal of anarcho-collectivism. Now, I'm not necessarily so much opposed to that, although I do have some practical kind of doubts about how workable that is as an ultimate solution for economic problems and economic calculations of and the distribution of resources, things of that nature.
So yours is more, it's more permanent, the labor vouchers, and it's not, you're not trying to go to anarcho-communism. Is that what?
Well, it's, well, like the thing is, I have like sentimental sympathies with anarcho-communism. Like, I'm not as opposed to anarcho-communism as some historical mutualists, such as, for instance, Clarence Lee Swartz have been, who stated that the Clarence Lee Swartz, who stated in no uncertain terms that the test of whether a position can truly be regarded as libertarian is whether it respects private property or not. And anarcho-communism and anarcho-collectivism do not, and thus in his view, those are not truly libertarian ideologies.
So the other distinction is property, where you favor use and occupancy and use, but once it's stopped being used and occupied, and then it belongs to the commons, and anybody else can claim it.
Pretty much, that is my position, which that's kind of the classical Proudhonist position, and I also, because a lot of people don't know what mutualism is, I sometimes refer to myself as a voluntary confederalist.
Anyways, now it's rebuttal. Just once you got the clarification.
Okay.
Ancom, anything you want to say?
Okay, I'm still a bit skeptical over the mutualist position. Like you said that you agree with, there's a lot of things that anarcho-communism tends to agree with also, after all. Anarcho-communism is an offshoot from mutualism. Mutualism was pretty much the original anarchism as spelled by Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, right? So, okay. So, you say that anarcho-collectivism is a peaceful step between mutualism and anarcho-communism, right? Okay.
Yeah. That's basically how Bakunin developed anarcho-collectivism. He basically took the basic economic understandings of Proudhon and combined that with the greater radicalism of and anti-capitalism of Kropotkin.
Okay. Well, what I get from that is, I don't think this extra step is needed. And I'll tell you why. Again, it goes back to how people perform decision-making in small groups. And basically the idea of anarchism is lots and lots of small groups, lots of small communes, with maybe ranging from up to, I don't know, something as low as 100 people up to maybe 1,000. After all, there's scientific evidence that you can't really remember more than, I think it's about 170 people, if I remember correctly.
I think he's like 150, but go on.
I remember reading it's 170, but whatever. So the idea with this is, if you're in a smaller community, you'll connect with people a lot better. If you live in a small village, you'll recognize everyone. That's how it usually works. If you live in a big city where there's a lot of people walking around everywhere, you're not going to recognize people very much. And if you apply this logic, you can clearly see if you want people to cooperate better, you have to split them up into small groups. Small communes work very effectively for anarcho-communism. Now, I don't know if mutualism espouses the same thing, and it would be nice to get your opinion on that. So go on, go for it.
Yeah, well, mutualism is not so much necessarily opposed to your logic of small groups. In fact, Proudhon was pretty big on this idea of majorities versus minorities. That's pretty much although Nietzsche and Stirner and Godwin and various other philosophical thinkers who inspired modern anarchism have sort of enunciated the same principle to varying degrees. In fact, it kind of goes back all the way to Plato and Aristotle, if not even further, to Eastern thinkers such as Lao Tzu and Sun Tzu. This whole idea that the masses, they tend to, like when people are in large groups, there tends to be a sort of mob mentality that develops, and it seems to happen spontaneously, right? Because when you have lots of people who share the same general ideology, the same general ideas, and someone deviates from that, then there's this almost cult-like in-group, out-group mentality that develops, and the masses feel a need to get rid of the black sheep, right? Get rid of the deviationist, right? Expel the sinner, to use religious terminology.
Okay. Okay, so by expelling the sinner, is that the idea of basically how religious people kick people out of their group because of, aspects that they can't change, maybe their skin color, or aspects that, genetic things usually? Is that the idea?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly, like how in Mormonism, there used to be this doctrine that black people have dark skin because they were neutral in the war between Christ and Lucifer, and so that dark skin is a curse from God for not taking any sides in the war between good and evil, being lukewarm, as Christians like to put it.
I mean, it does make sense. I mean, there are superstitions in history like black and red evil colours. Ironically, the colours we use for anarcho-communism, but whatever.
Yeah.
So it goes through. What was I going to say? I have completely forgotten. Hold on. Give me a sec, see if I can remember. Oh my god. Oh my. It was right there a minute ago. It's gone out of my mind. Oh man. So it was to do with the synod. Ah, I remember. Right. So it really affects. This just shows you how science has took power away from the church. Science has proven that black people got this relation with Lucifer, if it will, that a lot of religions seem to think. A lot of religions, you know, demonize people who aren't their own. For example, well, Christianity was quite a racist religion for most part. It was also a very misogynist religion. After all, Christianity itself.
Oh yeah, and even yeah, and even like and even like Orthodox and conservative Judaism have doctrines whereby wealth is correlated with morality.
Well, that's the stereotypical, you know, the Jew stereotype. That's where that comes from. But I want to get back onto the topic I was going on, and that is how science has kind of attacked religion. The way this has happened is science disproves myths created by religion. It proves that black people, in this case, are just people with a lot of melanin in their skin, a lot of pigmentation.
Right.
So that myth's gone. And if you prove enough of this stuff false, people will start to see religion for what it really is. A sham, a fraud, a way of controlling the masses.
Absolutely.
And once you eliminate this way of controlling the masses, they have to use other methods of doing so. So once the church lost control, the state had to grow. And as the state, if the state's not big enough, then it's up for the private owners to control this power. So there are three distinct groups which control power. Number one, the church. Number two, the state. Number three, private capital. The idea with this is we have to get rid of all of this. And I think we agree with that, don't we? We have to get rid of all three pillars.
Right.
Okay.
I absolutely agree with you.
Okay, that's great.
You on that. Like Perdone may not have been as avidly anti-theistic as, say, Marx was. However, he did say that there was a universal morality that had no need for any church or state to justify its existence, and in his eyes, that morality was what he called universal justice. And universal justice is basically what Christianity boils down to, if you take away all of the bullshit dogmas and doctrines that have accumulated around it over the years. And this isn't even technically a Christian idea. Originally, it comes from Confucianism and Taoism. That's where its roots are. This idea of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? Right. So basically, Perdone's position was any positive morality, any legitimately positive morality has to derive from the negative idea of simply not interfering with the freedom of another under any circumstance.
So that's negative liberty. But what about positive liberty?
To Proudhon, positive liberty was a natural extension that grew out of negative liberty.
Oh, because a lot of liberals tend to say that, or libertarians say they're completely different things. But according to Proudhon, one evolves out of the other.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Ancom. He just somehow left. Or I don't know what happened. Okay, he's back on. All right.
Sorry, my internet took a shit. I'm back now.
Yeah, he was saying that in mutualism by Proudhon, that negative freedom, well, positive liberty evolved out of negative liberty, and that instead of being distinct like libertarians and modern liberals would say, it evolved, is actually close related.
Okay, so you know what I understand about. So the idea of positive rights is, I might be wrong about this, but I'm going to give my interpretation of what it means is, positive rights are often used by the right to say, oh, you can do this, you can do that. But the thing is with negative rights are basically saying, you're free not to do that, you're free not to do this. Is that right?
Pretty much, like, basically, the reason like, the reason I sort of reject the usual libertarian position, the standard, at least American libertarian position, and also a lot of British libertarians hold this view as well, that negative liberty and positive liberty are intrinsically antagonistic to one another. But actually, that's a very recent conception within libertarian thought. In Proudhon's thinking, right, positive liberty naturally grew out of and complemented negative liberty, because negative liberty is describing not interfering with the rights or abilities of others, whereas positive liberty is describing the range of things you can do without having to interfere and impede those negative liberties. So the two concepts, whilst they may somewhat contradict each other in some instances, according to Proudhon, the two are natural logical extensions of one another. They don't have the strictly antagonistic nature often ascribed to them by ANCAPs and vulgar individualists.
Yeah. I mean, the founder of anarchism is, Proudhon, Dijak, who used the term libertarian in a political sense first to do so. This seems to have carried on very well through the other anarchist schools of thought, except ANCAP, which isn't anarchism, but besides the point there. This idea of negative liberty is true freedom. Positive liberty is basically, oh, for example, you're in prison. And in prison, you're free to pump some iron on the weight benches outside. However, you're not free not to follow the rules. So that's an example of negative liberty not being a thing. Of course, with the example of prison, I mean, that is a difficult thing to get around. And if we're talking about crime in an anarchist society as well, that's another issue which a lot of people try and say, gotcha, on. But the idea with crime is, my position in anarcho-communism is, the reason I prefer anarcho-communism over mutualism is, I think anarcho-communism it's better on crime, I think. So, I believe the cause of crime, well, there's many causes of it. So, for example, one of the causes is economic difficulties. Or if you require the means of survival but you don't get enough money, you'll have to steal a loaf of bread to feed your starving family. As Emma Goldman once said, ask for work. If they don't give you work, ask for bread. If they don't give you bread, take bread. That's just one example of the anarcho-communist position on crime. And the thing is with that is, it is a crime in a capitalist system to engage in these actions. However, it's not crime in an anarchist society, which is what we both advocate. We just advocate different schools of anarchism. That's how we are. So I wonder how a mutualist society would deal with crime. I'm curious about that.
The way in which a mutualist society would deal with crime, at least in my view, is basically the idea is
It's okay, take your time.
you cut
Bobby, are you okay?
yeah.
Wow.
You cut basically you cut the individuals' wages down to subsistence level, and if they repeat their offenses, you would essentially send them to another market or co-op with stricter standards. That's my proposal.
All right. Well, that actually helps a bit. I mean, I was going to elaborate. Let's say if someone, since you believe in a labour voucher system, if some people are very bad at planning, and if someone's very bad at planning, let's say they just spend all their labour vouchers on a few pieces of furniture, for example, and because they're pretty foolish, it's very foolish, of course, any sensible person would leave some food, but let's say they didn't, for example. Let's say they can't get food, they have no labour vouchers left, they spent it all on furniture for their living room or whatever, and now they need some bread to get by, and they don't have the labour vouchers to get it. So I do wonder in your society how this would do. Would you have things that are free access, or would everything be under labour vouchers? Just curious about that one.
Okay. Again, like, I have a sentimental attraction to this communistic idea of free access, but the problem is it's kind of impractical for a macro level economic structure.
Well, here's the thing. I don't see it as macro level. I just see it as a lot of small. It's basically a lot of micro level things. As we said before, it's in a small. It's lots of small communities, not one big body like a lot of people seem to believe. So
Right.
if a lot of small communes of, say, 500 people or whatever, that's just the number I'm going to use for this example. In that case, it's not really that much of a macro level thing. Of course, there's going to be communication between these groups. So if one group produces a lot of silk, for example, and some other areas don't produce enough silk, then that's an example of us anarcho-communists using mutual aid. Like, we'll give them silk, and we've both got enough silk to do what we need to do. And
Right.
if somewhere's suffering from a famine or whatever, we can give them food like bread, milk, maybe mainly, but of course other things can be brought as well. I mean, that's just my position. I don't see your critique there as very effective against anarcho-communism. Like you say, no, free access isn't very effective because it can't be done on a macro level thing. The thing is, it's not done on a macro level thing. It's a lot of things done on micro level things. It's a lot of examples of that happening.
Right. Well, the thing is, like, unlike a lot of anarchists and a lot of mutualists, where I differ from a lot of anarchists and mutualists is I'm very critical of federalism. I don't think that federalism really applies in the modern world. I just don't. I think that federalism had its place in history. I think that it had its place for the economic conditions that existed in colonial England and colonial America, but it doesn't really seem to me to be a viable strategy for today, and this is why I am quite critical of ANCAPs and in particular Agoras.
Agoras, they're the ones who want to boycott the government by not paying tax, aren't they? I think I might be wrong there.
Yeah, and also they tend to be like very very big on black market silver production.
Okay, that's interesting. So how did we get into a talk about federalism? Now, federalism is, well, it depends how you use the term, right? Federalism can either be, for example, the US is a federation. Each state can promote its own laws. Unlike the UK, which is a unitary government where, sorry about that, where every county has to follow the same laws. Is that what you mean by federalism then?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I wondered if there was another meaning of federalism that I'm missing, and I don't see the problem with that. Like, if that's the definition of federalism we're using, of course, different places are going to have different environments. Different environments require different laws sometimes. Right. I mean, where we collectively agree on laws. For example, in a cold environment, you might need a slower speed limit because icy roads, for example, can be much more dangerous to drive on. So an example like this shows an example where federalism can be used. Of course, this is where people agree on the laws via consensus decision making, and they'd also agree on sanctions for breaking these rules that are collectively decided on. So this is why I see federalism still useful in a lot of situations. After all, if in the case that if there wasn't any external factors at play, you'd be right. But the problem is here, there are external factors at play. For example, the one I brought up there. There could be also others, like how wet the area is, if they need to conserve water, or if how the quality of the soil, for example, for growing crops, things like this. I think federalism is actually required for. Go on.
Yeah. Well, my problem with federalism is not so much this idea of different places having different laws depending upon the individual conditions. Of course, I support that. My problem with federalism, though, is when people act like federalism should be applied in every instance, regardless of
I think I know what you're getting at.
differing circumstances, differing economic and environments, for instance.
Yeah.
Like basically I'm referring to this perception, especially a lot of American and English conservatives have, of federalism and nothing else. I am a social utilitarian. I think that different circumstances merit different methods for the maximization of social utility.
Okay, so you believe, so what I'm getting from this is, you believe in universal morals. For example, for everywhere, wherever you are, the same penalty should be applied to crimes such as murder, rape, you know, the big ones. Is that what you're getting at here? And with federalism, there could be different laws between these?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, I think I'm starting to understand this now. But of course, if you left people to their own devices, I mean, if it's not federalism, there has to be some kind of force to make sure everywhere has the same law. Unless I'm missing something here, but of course, if you have lots of small communes, which is what both our societies are, you would see that people would decide on different laws and different sanctions for breaking those laws.
Right.
I mean,
And I don't.
but whatever.
And right, and like I said, I oppose the absolutist interpretation of federalism because I do think that there are certain crimes such as rape, pedophilia, and so on that deserve to be prosecuted in the same way across the board. Of course, there are other smaller crimes that I do think, such as vandalism and burglary, that I do think a federalist motive organization would be better suited for. So it depends.
So for example, with these higher crimes such as murder, rape, pedophilia, stuff like that, how are you going to make sure these places all have the same laws? So for example, you have a penalty against murder, maybe it's life imprisonment or something. I don't agree with that. I think Norway's system's a lot better, which is 21 years. But besides the point there, whatever. How are you going to... So how's this way you're actually going to make sure every place has the same laws, saying you're against federalism? I don't think that's possible, personally.
I know. It's not so much about every place having the same laws, so much as it is certain crimes that cause a certain amount of undue social harm or individual harm should be prosecuted more severely than lower level crimes, for instance, that just like that are just basically nuisances, or such as vandalism and graffiti and so on, which in my view, and I know this is a controversial view, I don't think those things should even be crimes.
Me neither.
I think that a crime should be a behavior that causes undue social or individual harm.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's a fair comment, but again, going back to the whole federalism thing, I mean, it is good in idea that everyone would have the same moral guidelines if there was universal morals, but I don't think there is.
I don't think there is either, but at the same time, I don't really think there needs to be in order to have generally agreed upon morals. I mean, the vast majority of people have evolved to value cooperation, to value manners, to value kindness, to value compassion. I mean, sure, there will always be a few sociopaths and psychopaths who don't hold these values, but they're minority. And granted, they're often a minority in powerful positions, and so even though they are a minority, their actions have wide-scale macro-level effects.
Yeah, they do, because this society does reward those who don't think compassionately about other human beings. If you're ruthless enough, you'll get to the top. And that's why there's a lot of sociopaths and psychopaths who are bosses and things. But, okay, my idea with sociopaths and psychopaths, I mean, there's chance that I do think they exist, yes, I do. But an anarcho-communist society, they wouldn't have any more power over anything than another person would. They wouldn't have any more power because everyone has equal power. You have as much power as you want to do whatever you want, but no power over anyone else. And this means, of course, they might turn to violence and things because they can't feel morals and stuff, whatever. And yes, we have to deal with them somehow. If this would be through maybe some kind of correctional system or whatever, I don't really know how it'd be, because you know, kick them out and go to another course.
Is something wrong with Anton's computer?
Small minority, which again is a question in its own right, and I do wonder how mutualism would deal with a problem like that. But I mean, first is my suggestion that some people just can't fit into society very well. I mean, this is great and all because they're nowhere near as powerful as they used to be under the ruthless capitalist system, or even worse, how powerful they'd be in anarcho-capitalism. Imagine that, Jesus. So I think the best way to deal with sociopaths is minimize the amount of power they have, but they'll still not want to cooperate with other people. That's how they are, and they are still a problem somehow. And I wonder with mutualism, what's that position on sociopathy and psychopathy and stuff like that? I'm just curious. Go ahead.
the mutualist position on sociopathy, on dealing with sociopaths and psychopaths is, well, it kind of depends upon whether you're talking about, like, for instance, like, would you like to hear the market mutualist, the mainstream market mutualist position, or my position, which is, as I've said, voluntary confederalist mutualism?
I don't know, that's just kind of jargon to me. It's just like, it's just one of those ist words that means nothing to me, but I want to hear your position.
Okay, my position on sociopaths and psychopaths is basically it's very much akin to the typical ANCOM position, which combined with the kind of typical ANCAP position. It's kind of a mix of those two positions. Like, so basically, my position would involve a mix of just social exclusion of sociopaths and psychopaths and economic sanctions to keep them from getting back into the dominant society.
Okay, so for example, if you found some sociopaths in your society, and let's say some misinformed, because you've got to admit that psychopaths are very smart people. They know how to manipulate people very well. So somehow they manipulate people and get into one of your cooperatives in your society, and eventually someone finds out about it. So, but what could the damage be about that? I mean, what damage could it do if a sociopath got into a position like this? I mean, that's the point I want to say. I mean, the mutualist economy is still a market economy. It fosters some competition. And because it fosters some competition, that means there is going to be an aspect of sociopaths rising up into better positions than other people because of their ruthless nature.
Yeah. Well, my rebuttal to that claim would be, if you take away landlordism, if you take away the ability of sociopaths and psychopaths to exploit a person financially through rent and usury, then their power and their privilege is diminished a great deal, because sociopaths and psychopaths, like many of them, overlap very much with narcissism, and so their worst nightmare is being forced to work on an equal par with others. That's their worst nightmare. And so, if you take away, like I said, the ability of sociopaths and psychopaths to financially exploit people through landlordism, through rent, through usury, then their power and privilege is diminished a great deal. Their ability to exploit and ruin the lives of others is diminished to such a point where essentially it may not be impossible for them to ruin the lives of others within a mutualist economy, but it would be far more difficult than in a landlordist economy.
No, yeah, like basically capitalism in general there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this still doesn't answer one thing, and that is the psychopaths especially, not particularly sociopaths all that much, but psychopaths, the ones who are born psychopathic, tend to be extremely intelligent, extremely good at manipulating people. You'd have to get people knowledgeable on this. And of course, there's always going to be some suckers for this. There's always going to be some. So what's your way in getting around that? What's your way in keeping people educated about what sociopaths could do, what the actions they take, the ways they manipulate people? Because I could
Well,
see,
that's why
I could see a sociopath getting into a cooperative and saying, hey, if you all follow what I'm doing, I promise you, we'll be much more successful, guys. All right? We'll be much more successful. Tremendous, believe me.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like yeah. Well, well, that's why I would educate people within my cooperative on what these psychological terms mean and how to distinguish sociopaths from psychopaths, how to recognize them, and so as to make exploitation by sociopaths and psychopaths far more difficult.
Okay. So what I see by that is that does minimize the risk. If each cooperative did some sort of education, of course you could do some consensus decision making, because I believe you use that in mutualism. I might be wrong. Okay, you do. Great. So you could agree to some sort of regulation on cooperatives where it says, oh, we must teach the people who work in our mills, we must teach each other this knowledge to avoid this potential douchebag rising up and trying to start capitalism up again.
Right.
And that is one way to do it. Clearly, again, this goes back to the basis of anarchism, which is we are not against rules. We are against rulers.
Exactly.
And this is coming into play. Of course, I'd advocate for similar things in my society, to educate people on the dangers that some people possess, the dangers where some people could manipulate others. So it's all very good having the most educated society possible. Of course, I'm now curious about other things. So this brings us into another issue, and I'd love to hear your idea on this. Education. So what about schooling? What's your position on schooling?
Okay. Well, my position on school, like, I don't really support either public or private schools in the conventional sense. I support democratic schooling and personal individual education. Like, so for instance, I very much encourage people to read a lot of books, like not just ebooks, but actual paper books, if at all possible. Now, I personally read both paper books and ebooks, but I prefer paper books because, for one thing, they have a certain smell to them, and sure, they can be easily torn in some instances, but there's but actually reaching across a page with your fingers is far different from like clicking through pages on a computer.
Okay. My position on education is rather simple. Yes, I do advocate for democratic schooling. That is where the student is on the same level as the teacher. Teachers are just there to encourage the students to keep on with the interests they have selected. So I strongly agree with democratic schooling. Of course, this goes into another question. Should it be compulsory? Should schooling be compulsory in this way? Should democratic
No.
Okay, I actually agree with that. I don't think it should, but again, the way anarchism is designed, of course, there could be some chance that one or two or many of these collective groups could decide on, say, well, we need our people to be most educated. So we should pass this rule that all children are required to go through democratic schooling. And I disagree with that. I do. My position on that is not every child learns in the same way. Different children learn in different ways. But of course, democratic
Absolutely agree.
could help that. But again, democratic schooling is still way around a lot of people. So some people may prefer just one-on-one teaching, being taken around different places in their world where they get to learn about things by being there.
Right.
And yeah, I agree. Okay, so our position on education seems to be pretty simple. Similar, sorry. So that's all good to hear there. So because our position on education is very similar to each other, I mean, it still doesn't defeat this idea that some collectives could institute some kind of regulation against this, and people having to go to democratic school to, be educated on some parts of life. I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I think it's the job of parents to educate their kids on a lot of this stuff. I mean, you learn most of the stuff in your life from your family, mainly your parents, especially your mother usually. But again, I'm not going to go into that whole gender disparity thing. Of course, some children learn from their fathers as well. But I think that's a very strong agree on that we have. So is there any other topics? Is there anything you'd like to criticize about my archaeology? Because I feel like this has been quite one-sided. You've been on the defense, I've been on the offense. Let's switch that around a bit. So anything you would try to attack me on?
Okay, well, well, like I've said, I have a sentimental attraction to many anarcho-communist ideas, and I do share a lot of views that anarcho-communists tend to take, such as anarcho-feminism and green anarchism. However, I am not entirely against a market economy. The reason being, I think that a market economy, at least in the modern world, is the most efficient engine for the maximization of social utility. And it's like Proudhon said said communism is inequality, but not as property is, whereas whereas property is exploitation of the weak by the strong. Communism, on the other hand, is exploitation of the strong by the weak. And and yeah, to be fair, Proudhon did do quite a bit of those kinds of polemics that maybe I wouldn't necessarily do so much myself, but I think it kind of gets the point across, even if it is in a rather crude manner.
Okay, so I guess this shows the difference of what we're like. I mean, you're very versed on the historical figures within anarchism. Me, I don't really care that much about that. I mean, I follow anarchism because of the philosophies behind it, not exactly the philosophies that people have proposed over time. It's more about the general basis behind it. So
yeah, and
Joseph Proudhon say things like communism is the exploitation of the strong by the weak. I just don't think that's really accurate, to be honest. The way I see it is communism is, well, we already know it's the absence of a class structure, the absence of a state, the absence of money, etc.
Right.
I don't really see how that is the exploitation of the strong by the weak. Unless it's from what it was before, which in a way, if you want to defend capitalism, I guess you could say that. But we're not capitalists. We're both socialists. We're both, after all, mutualism is a type of socialism. I believe you refer to it as market socialism. But the point behind this is, I don't think that statement is accurate. I'm just saying that. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, a lot of people get confused about when I quote people. I'm not quoting people because I necessarily agree with everything they ever said. I'm quoting people to get a point across. Not.
Yes. That's the very big difference between us, I've noticed. As this debate's continued, you've gone a lot for the anarchist scholars, and you don't really hear that all the lot from me. I'm more grounded in how anarchism manifests itself, the logical ideology behind it, rather than the people behind it. I think that's the difference between us. When it comes to personality types, sorry to get into this, I'm obsessed, I know. When it comes to that, it does show the difference between a thinker and a feeler. The thinker is very grounded in the ideology. The feeler is very grounded in the philosophers behind the ideology. That's how I see it. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I guess.
Okay, well, okay, anything else? Is there any other flaws you see in anarcho-communism that you'd like to elaborate on?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I find that a lot of anarcho-communists have the same problem that a lot of ANCAPs have, which is to say they are absolutists, right? And only whereas I would define ANCAPs as as economic absolutists and market absolutists, I would define and comms as just the opposite, absolutist market abolitionists. And I don't really see either market abolitionism or market absolutism as practical strategies for the maximization of social utility and social organization.
It is a fair comment, though, because many ANCOMs, and I am included in this, I do advocate for the abolition of the market. I don't see it as a a reasonable thing. Trade is just something pushed forward by capital. It's not necessarily needed. I believe society should cooperate with each other. You know, if one society is falling on hard times, and another society is kind of booming a bit, then I see mutual aid as the way to go. Like,
right.
Very much, I strongly believe in mutual aid. Markets, no, I don't believe in. Well, markets is mainly trade, so I don't believe in trade. I'm against that for the most part. And you say that, well, you're comparing anarcho-communists with ANCAPs because you say ANCAPs are complete market. What's the term?
Absolutists.
Absolutists. That's the one. I'm sorry, I tripped on my mind a little bit there. And yes, you are right that ANCOMs are absolutist abolitionists of markets. Yes, you're right there. But all I'm seeing here is sort of a grey area fallacy. It's not necessarily that if two sides propose two sides of a different issue. For example, one side says, I believe in, well, whatever. I believe in A, someone believes in B. The truth does not necessarily lie between those points. It could be that one side...
I absolutely agree with you. In fact, like, I'm pretty, if you've seen my comments, I am rabid on the horseshoe theory. I am rabid on centrist. I don't believe that centrism is, like, absolute centrism, at least, is a practical political strategy. I believe that more often than not, centrism protects the status quo. Now, I do believe in a certain extent of pragmatism in regards to methodology. However, pragmatism and centrism, I see a very wide breadth of difference between those categories, philosophically and epistemologically.
Okay, so your comments on the horseshoe theory, I guess, isn't that the idea of saying, well, the horseshoe theory is got at the center and then it kind of goes inwards at the bottom? So you say, like, the far left. So, for example, the far left is often viewed as, totalitarian state communism. The far right often viewed as totalitarian state fascism. Well, if you put them on a spectrum, then the horseshoe theory does seem to connect. But the thing is, I don't use the spectrum. I often use a two-dimensional system to put different political ideologies on.
Right.
The political compass. That's what I use. And it's not really a square political compass like you're led to believe. It's more of a triangle. And there's 3 dimensions which you can either be on. And this is mainly chosen between where you believe the means of production should be held. It's either going to be absolute socialism, absolute statism, or absolute private capitalism. That's how I see it. And, you can put each society on there based on the percentage of what is owned by what.
Right.
Like, that's how I see the system. It's more of a pyramid pyramid theory than a horseshoe theory. That's what I think on that.
Right. I agree.
You might have seen it before, but I made something called the means of production pyramid. Have you seen that before? If not, I'll show you.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. I have.
Okay. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. That's great.
How do you all feel about Sudbury schools?
So,
I support it.
I know thing you could be debating on is on mutual credit banks. Kwame brought that up.
Oh yeah.
mutual credit. I don't know anything about that.
Okay, like mutual. My stance on mutual credit banks is okay. Like the distinction between mutual credit banks and the kind of fractional reserve banking system we have now is the fractional reserve banking system is run in a hierarchical top-down manner, whereas mutual credit banks would be run in a horizontal bottom-up manner on a directly democratic basis controlled by the laborers and creditors themselves directly.
I don't know much about this. But I don't know much about this topic, but I'm going to say what I think it is. I might be wrong, but I'm going to go ahead anyway. What I think, is this the system? Is this the system which gives out the labor vouchers? Is that what it is?
It's that's part of it, but but that's not quite all of it. Mutual credit banking was originally proposed by William B. Greene and William Bailey, and it was elaborated on later by Josiah Warren, Lysander Spooner, and Benjamin R. Tucker. And the basic idea behind mutual credit banking is, like I said, you have it's like one of the main examples of mutual credit banking in today's society would be, for instance, online banking, like free online credit banking institutions like Let's and P2P. Those would be examples of mutual credit banking in the modern world.
Is there anything related to credit unions?
They can be, but not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
I'm still so confused on that.
And
I'm still confused on this idea. Skip it on to.
So it's peer-to-peer based, and it's also basically there's no interest rate. They just charge enough just to cover the cost of handing out the loan.
Exactly.
So if they loan out $100 and it costs you $5 to loan out that loan, an administrative cost, then the person pays back $105, but they don't pay back any of the interest. They didn't have interest.
Right.
So in that case, this is still confusing me. I mean, this mutual credit bank or whatever. I mean, I'm almost getting a bit confused here if we're talking about labor vouchers or money now, the currency.
Well,
I'm kind of confused on that.
well, okay. The mutual credit banking is a, and by the way, not all mutualists support mutual credit banking. There are some mutualists that consider it too close to the modern capitalist system, just as there are many ANCOMs who hold that view. But the basic idea behind mutual credit banking is it revolves around the decentralization of currency. And also the removal of capitalistic exploitative cost and price control mechanisms regarding the undue restriction upon occupancy and use, the undue overpayment according to far more than what was put out by the laborer creditor.
So I heard you talking about the decentralization of currency. Is this talking about cryptocurrencies or something? Is this what we're getting into now?
It can involve cryptocurrencies, although to be honest, I'm quite skeptical of cryptocurrencies. But yeah, cryptocurrencies can certainly overlap with mutual credit in a number of instances, such as, like I've said, the peer-to-peer networks, the lets, and an example of an example of working mutualism today, a functional mutualist credit co-op would be the Mondragon Cooperative in Spain.
I've heard of that one. There's a few in the UK as well that I know of. A few cooperatives that I know. The two biggest ones are the Cooperative Group, which is very appropriately named. Unfortunately, I think it's shrinking, but oh well. And the other one is Nationwide, which is a building society. You ever heard of any of those?
Yeah, I've heard of Nationwide. And
have you? Okay.
How is mutual credit banking compatible with labor vouchers?
Well, mutual credit banking, mutual credit banking is not something that
all mutuals approve of. Okay.
that is universally agreed upon by mutualists. In particular, individualist mutualists tend to be quite skeptical of such institutions, which they see as uncomfortably close to the fractional reserve banking system we have at current.
All right. Looks like let me check the questions, but it seems that we haven't gone enough. We probably gonna talk for a few more minutes and then close
Okay.
out. So, and can you both give you a closing statement, starting with, well, it's gonna end with Bob because Ancom started first. So, Ancom.
Are we ready to do closing statements? I don't know how long it's been going. It's been going about 1 hour 20, I think, so far. So, are we going to do closing statements now, or how long do we want this to go on? That's the thing.
I wanted to end it pretty soon because I have to study for a class.
Okay, fair enough. I understand that. So, okay, so, this debate's been pretty fun and all. I mean, I might have gone a bit too hard on him. I have a tendency to do that. It's very much my grounded in facts nature. And I have seen the differences in debate styles between us. Of course, even if we were reflecting the alternate ideologies, if I was the mutualist and Bobby was the Ancom, I think these same debating styles will come into play. For example, you've seen how I tend to be very impersonal. I haven't brought up many people, have I? Apart from the beginning where I brought up Emma Goldman. I think I referred to what's his name? I referred to Proudhon a couple of times, but apart from that, I haven't really referred to any of these names. I tend to be very impersonal, if you will. But you can see Bobby, on the other hand, seems to feel some kind of personal gratification for bringing these people up. Like, I don't really know all that many people that he's brought up. I don't. I've heard the names before, maybe, but I don't really know anything about them. And I think that's what it shows. I mean, if you got me debating someone else, maybe it would go a completely different way. And of course, I've seen how my debate opponent Bobby has been more of a defensive type. He seems to have opened up to me and let me, get a few jabs in there, if you like. And, I'm a very nice debater in that regard. If someone does that, I'll open up and let them get a few jabs in. So a debate goes both ways. It goes in the way that you want to attack your opponent's position, but at the same time, you want to learn about your opponent's position. On to you.
Yeah, and I personally respect Ancom's views. I mean, I've found that debating with Ancoms has tended to be far more productive than debating with ANCAPs, who basically just tend to assume that they're right automatically because they took 1 or 2 economics classes.
True that.
Where can we find, like, a lot of people in the comment section don't seem to know much about mutualism. So where do you suggest where you can find mutualist theory and mutualist thought and mutualist anarchism?
Some good sources of...
I know C4SS is one, the Center for a Stateless Society.
Yeah. Some good examples would be mutualist.org, free market anti-capitalism. Another would be Mutualist blog, free market anti-capitalist on mutualistblogspot.com. Also, the mutualism economic theory page on Wikipedia.
So just type up mutualism and free market anti-capitalism on the Google search, and then you'll be able to find it.
Right.
Yeah. Vegan. Remember to link a few things. Link both the Wikipedia pages for mutualism and anarcho-communism. I think that people get the hang of it. I think that's
also
we all agree on that. That's fine.
the Isocracy Network.
I'm gonna leave you a link like when I can get back after the debate is finished. So, but Bobby's gonna like send me the links, and then I'll just post it in the comment section by tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. This is the vegan anarchist. No meat, no milk, no masters. See ya.
Oh, but I want a nice steak.
This has been Bobby, aka Mutualist, Freedom Fighter 3, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, Viva la Perdón. Goodbye.
And this is Ancom Ramblings. I hope you'll be ready to see my next tearing apart of capitalism. How capitalism profits off your misery.
Yeah. See ya.